Hey everyone, it's Colin. How's it going? Okay, here's a story. A viewer named Greg from Virginia got in touch. He said he had bought this pre-modded Game Boy Advance off of eBay. It already had one of those IPS replacement displays installed. Unfortunately, when he got it, it didn't work. He suspected there might have been some kind of shipping damage or something like that. Basically, when you'd turn the console on, you couldn't see anything on the screen. And he went back and forth with the seller, and unfortunately they couldn't figure it out. Thankfully, he did end up getting his money back so he could go and buy another pre-modded console from somewhere else. But he also got to keep the broken one. Apparently the original seller didn't want it back. So he sent it on to me to see if I could figure out what was wrong with it. So we're gonna do that, but I was thinking, you know, this is also a great opportunity to just take a look at the build quality of a pre-modded console like this. I've never actually gone out and bought a pre-modded console before. Obviously, I kind of mod them all myself. So I'm curious as to just kind of what the average build quality of a console is like if you were to go out and just pay someone to do it for you. Obviously, it's not going to be, you know, indicative of the way the entire industry is, but as a single sample, it's kind of curious. So let's tear into this thing and see if we can figure out what's going on. I'm going to start by throwing a couple of batteries in the back, and we'll just see if we can reproduce the original behavior that Greg was seeing when he got the console. Okay, so it chimes, but yeah, there's nothing on the display, just as he described. Now, if you look really closely, it kind of looks like the backlight is blinking on and off very dimly. It's hard to tell. I'm not sure what's causing that. That could be the display itself. That could be like the display ribbon board inside there that you install as part of the mod. We'll have to see. But, well, either way, this thing is definitely needing some attention. So let's take it apart and see if we can see what's going on. All right, so let's pull the back housing off here. Now, Greg did mention that he had done this when he got it as like a troubleshooting step, just to see if anything was amiss, like a ribbon cable had gotten disconnected, you know, shipping damage sort of thing. One thing that I am noticing right off the bat is I'm not thrilled with the way that these wires were run. These are the wires that go to the shoulder buttons to do the brightness up down. You hold down select and you can toggle the shoulder buttons to make the brightness of the backlight go up and down. He's using appropriate gauge wires, but unfortunately with the way that they got routed, you can see this red wire is really tight and it goes right across where one of these standoffs inside the shell goes. So it's getting pinched, and I don't really like the look of that. I mean, it's not the end of the world, but it's one of those could have paid a little bit more attention and maybe not had that happen to you kind of situations. The board itself appears to be in good shape. One thing I am noticing is that it's missing its screws to hold the board into the front panel. Is that a problem? Well, yes and no. I mean, they're not necessary to make the console work, but a lack of these screws will have a negative impact on the button feel on the front of the console, because the buttons press against those rubber membranes, which then make contact on the opposite side of this motherboard. These screws were strategically placed by Nintendo to be able to hold that board in place when you're mashing on the buttons. So without those screws, yeah, the back housing does clamp down and hold the board in place, but you'll find the button action is a little bit spongier than you otherwise would like. So not seeing these screws in here, again, I'm not sure if that's something that the original modder failed to put back in, or if this was just something that happened when Greg was going through to try to troubleshoot this. If Greg forgot to put him in, whoops, no big deal, whatever. It was his console at the time anyway. If the original seller forgot to put them in, that's a sign of some sloppiness, and I would not be thrilled to see that if this were my console and I had bought it. Either way, these two wires have nothing to do with the backlight. It does look like the ribbon cable is connected correctly up top here. So let's get that unlatched. The bail is still in good shape. It's not broken. The ribbon cable on this video adapter is a little on the tight side, but not horrible. Let's see what happens when we lift this guy up. Okay, all right, so the wiring is a little tight. I wish there had been a bit more slack in these. Again, appropriately soldered. I mean, everything in here looks fine. The ribbon cable here got capped and taped off, which is nice to prevent shorts, but one thing that I am noticing is missing is the piece of foam. Now, not every kit comes with one, but it's a good idea, not just because it helps hold everything in place, but that piece of foam that goes on the back of the screen can also help prevent this replacement circuit board from shorting out against the main motherboard. This display adapter ribbon, whatever you want to call it, it's very thin, and I think in most cases you probably don't have anything to worry about, but it's cheap insurance, so it's kind of a bummer to see that not in there. Actually, real quick, let's take a look at some other stuff here. So these are replacement rubber membranes. Again, you know, not the end of the world, but the quality of these membranes definitely has an effect on button feel. So if you really like the way the original console feels, try to go with original membranes, assuming you can find some that are still in good shape. These third-party ones, just like the quality of the shells and the buttons themselves, replacements, they can be hit and miss. So it's hard to tell what's good and what's not. I don't really want to undo the soldering, so let's take the screen out of the equation. Let me disconnect the motherboard and this replacement board from the screen, and then we'll test it against another Game Boy Advance just to see what might be wrong here. Okay, yeah, so these are both 32-pin boards. That's a good thing. That takes a factor out of this. Not that it really matters. This video adapter ribbon can support both 32 and 40-pin boards, which is really smart of them, to be honest, instead of having to spin two different versions. Okay, put that out of the way. And then here's that piece of foam that I was talking about. I mean, it just sits in there. It's the simplest little thing, but it's nice to have. So we have a shell here with a display in it that we know works. I don't want to pull the display out. I'm testing the display as the unknown in this case, specifically because I know with the adhesive that comes with these displays, plus with how thin they are, there is a chance of cracking the display if you try to pry it back out. So I'm just gonna leave the display in both housing, and it's just a lot easier to transfer the rest of this from one to the other. Okay, so we're put together enough to see if we can make this work. Let's throw some batteries in here. We are in the off position. What do we get? So it's the exact same thing. I don't know if you can tell, but the backlight's just blinking on and off, which is a bummer. But I think I have an idea as to what's going on. So I'm looking at these parts a little bit closer. We know that this IPS screen adapter board doesn't work with my display. So that means there's definitely something wrong with this adapter board. I'm looking at the two of them closer together, side by side, and there's a pin missing on Greg's IPS adapter board that mine has and his doesn't. It's on the connector that goes to the actual LCD screen. You'll notice that there's one pin close to the end on this side that's just not there, but mine has all of them. These are both using the Funny Playing adapter kit. I know that because that's what I installed in mine, and it's an identical ribbon cable that came in this other one. What I don't know is why this adapter board is missing a pin while mine isn't. I don't know if that's due to improper installation, like something just got damaged when it was all being put together. Like maybe when whoever assembled his console, like flipped this on there, you know, the video cable from the screen, like on there the wrong way and like jammed it down like really hard and crooked or whatever and like broke that pin. Or if it's just a goof from the manufacturer, which is entirely possible. Now, how did this supposedly ever work? I think the answer is it didn't. I think whoever assembled this console didn't test it. You know, it's not like something happened after the console was shipped to Greg that it had this problem. Which I guess raises a really important question, and that is, who do you trust? How can you find someone who creates good quality modded consoles versus just going on eBay or Etsy and picking someone at random? Well, I think the easiest approach is to go look at the websites for the companies that sell the mod parts and see if they either sell the pre-modded consoles themselves, which many of them do, or at least have a list of like trusted modders, people that they work with on a regular basis and recommend to their customers who just want one that's pre-modded. Not to say that you can't get a good console from eBay or Etsy, but in those cases you need to look very diligently at the reputation of that person from the aspect of the communication they get. If you were to buy from like a trusted modder off of one of those, you know, parts websites, generally they're going to be vetted because the parts, you know, sellers have a vested interest in recommending good quality mods to people, right? I mean, otherwise it could affect their own sales, even to people who just want to buy the kits. You know, it's just due diligence that you would otherwise have to do. Of course, I'm going to recommend that people do these mods themselves because I feel like the vast majority of people can. Even if they initially lack the skills or the parts or the tools or the confidence to do so, that's all stuff that you can get and you can learn and you can develop. But I do understand that there are people who just want to play the games. They don't really care so much about the journey with the hardware. They just want to get to the reward, or they have legitimate reasons why they can't do those mods themselves. And I don't fault anyone who wants to buy a pre-modded console. If that's your thing, go for it. You know, it's just helping to expand the community anyway and gets you something that you want and enjoy. But yeah, sad to say, as we can definitely tell in the case of this poor console, you have to do your homework and there are definitely always some risks. Anyway, if you like the video, I would appreciate a thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at thisdoesnotcomp. And as always, thanks for watching.